Good morning. This is Kent Blaylock with SDG Bible Study. That's the Soli Deo Gloria Bible Study coming to you on this Independence Day 2026, July the 4th, as we celebrate our country's 250th anniversary. I hope you enjoy the day, that you celebrate with friends and family, and that you remember how good and how gracious God has been to our nation. This morning, we will continue reading from the reading plan As It Happened, a 1-year chronological walk through the Bible, and then also reading from Daily Doctrine, a 1-year guide to systematic theology. This morning, we'll be in the book of 2 Kings, chapters 12 and 13, and also 2 Chronicles, chapter 24. So join me as we read God's word together. 2 Kings, chapter 12. In the 7th year of Jehu, Jehoash became king, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah of Beersheba. And Joash did what was right in the sight of Yahweh all his days, in which Jehoiada the priest instructed him. Only the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrifice and burn incense on the high places. Then Jehoash said to the priest, all the money of the sacred things which is brought into the house of Yahweh, both the money for each number man, the money from each person's assessment in the census, and all the money which any man's heart prompts him to bring into the house of Yahweh, let the priests take it for themselves, each from his acquaintance, and they shall repair the damages of the house wherein any damage may be found. Now it happened that in the 23rd year of King Jehoash, the priests had not repaired the damages of the house. Then King Jehoash called for Jehoiada the priest and for the other priests and said to them, why do you not repair the damages of the house? So now take no more money from your acquaintances, but give it over to pay for the damages of the house. So the priests agreed that they would take no more money from the people, nor repair the damages of the house. But Jehoiada the priest took a chest and bored a hole in its lid and put it beside the altar on the right side as one comes into the house of Yahweh. And the priests who kept watch over the threshold put in it all the money which was brought into the house of Yahweh. Now it happened that when they saw that there was much money in the chest, the king's scribe and the high priest came up, tied it in bags, and counted the money which was found in the house of Yahweh. They gave the money which was weighed out into the hands of those who did the work, who had the oversight of the house of Yahweh, and they paid it out to the craftsmen of wood and the builders who worked on the house of Yahweh, and to the masons and the hewers of stone, and for buying timber and hewn stone to repair the damages to the house of Yahweh, and for all that was laid out for the house to repair it. But there were not made for the house of Yahweh silver cups, snuffers, bowls, trumpets, any vessels of gold or vessels of silver from the money which was brought into the house of Yahweh. For they gave that to those who did the work, and with it they repaired the house of Yahweh. Moreover, they did not require an accounting from the men into whose hand they paid the money in order to pay those who did the work, for they were doing it faithfully. Money from the guilt offerings and money from the sin offerings was not brought into the house of Yahweh. It was for the priests. Then Hazael, king of Aram, went up and fought against Gath and captured it. And Hazael set his face to go up to Jerusalem. And Jehoash, king of Judah, took all the holy things that Jehoshaphat and Jehoram and Ahaziah, his fathers, kings of Judah, had set apart as holy, and his own holy things, and all the gold that was found among the treasuries of the house of Yahweh and of the king's house, and sent them to Hazael, king of Aram. Then he went away from Jerusalem. Now the rest of the acts of Joash and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And his servants arose and made conspiracy and struck down Joash at the house of Millo as he was going down to Silla. Now Josachar, the son of Shimeath, and Jehozabad, the son of Shomer, his servant, struck him, and he died. They buried him with his fathers in the city of David, and Amaziah, his son, became king in his place. 2 Kings chapter 13. In the 23rd year of Joash, the son of Ahaziah, king of Judah, Jehoahaz, the son of Jehu, became king over Israel at Samaria, and he reigned 17 years. And he did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh and followed the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, with which he made Israel sin. He did not depart from them. So the anger of Yahweh burned against Israel. He gave them continually into the hand of Hazael, king of Aram, and into the hand of Ben-Hadad, the son of Hazael. Then Jehoahaz entreated the face of Yahweh, and Yahweh listened to him, for he saw the oppression of Israel, how the king of Aram oppressed them. And Yahweh gave Israel a savior, so that they came out from under the hand of the Arameans, and the sons of Israel lived in their tents as formerly. Nevertheless, they did not depart from the sins of the house of Jeroboam, with which he made Israel sin, but walked in them. And the Asherah also remained standing in Samaria. For he did not leave to Jehoahaz any people for the army except 50 horsemen and 10 chariots and 10,000 foot soldiers. The king of Aram had caused them to perish and made them like the dust at threshing. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoahaz and all that he did and his might, are they not written in the book of the chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Jehoahaz slept with his fathers, and they buried him in Samaria, and Joash his son became king in his place. In the 37th year of Joash king of Judah, Jehoash the son of Joahaz became king over Israel in Samaria, and reigned 16 years. He did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, with which he made Israel sin, but he walked in them. Now the rest of the acts of Joash and all that he did in his might, with which he fought against Amaziah, king of Judah, are they not written in the book of the chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Joash slept with his fathers, and Jeroboam sat on his throne. And Joash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Elisha became sick with the illness of which he was to die. So Joash, the king of Israel, came down to him and wept over him and said, my father, the chariots of Israel and his horsemen. And Elisha said to him, take a bow and arrows. So he took a bow and arrows. Then he said to the king of Israel, put your hand on the bow. And he put his hand on it. Then Elisha placed his hands on the king's hands. And he said, open the window toward the east. And he opened it. Then Elisha said, shoot. And he shot. And he said, Yahweh's arrow of salvation, even the arrow of salvation over Aram, for you will strike the Arameans at Aphek until you have consumed them. And he said, take the arrows. And he took them. And he said to the king of Israel, strike the ground. And he struck it 3 times and stood still. So the man of God was angry with him and said, you should have struck 5 or 6 times. Then you would have struck Aram until you have consumed it. But now you shall strike Aram only 3 times. Elisha died, and they buried him. Now the marauding bands of the Moabites would enter into the land in the spring of the year. Now it happened that they were burying a man, and behold, they saw a marauding band, and they cast the man into the grave of Elisha. And when the man touched the bones of Elisha, he became alive and stood up on his feet. Now Hazael, king of Aram, had oppressed Israel all the days of Jehoahaz. But Yahweh was gracious to them, and he had compassion on them, and turned to them because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and would not bring them to ruin or cast them from his presence until now. Then Hazael, king of Aram, died, and Ben-Hadad, his son, became king in his place. Then Jehoahaz, the son of Jehoahaz, took again from the hand of Ben-Hadad, the son of Hazael, the cities which he had taken in war from the hand of Jehoahaz, his father. 3 times Joash struck him and recovered the cities of Israel. 2 Chronicles chapter 24. Joash was 7 years old when he became king, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah from Beersheba. And Joash did what was right in the sight of Yahweh all the days of Jehoiada the priest. And Jehoiada took up 2 wives for him, and he became the father of sons and daughters. Now it happened afterwards that Joash had in his heart to restore the house of Yahweh. And he gathered the priests and Levites and said to them, go out to the cities of Judah and gather money from all Israel to repair the house of your God annually, and you shall do the matter quickly. But the Levites did not act quickly. So the king called for Jehoiada the chief priest and said to him, why have you not required the Levites to bring in from Judah and from Jerusalem the levy fixed by Moses, the servant of Yahweh, on the congregation of Israel for the tent of the testimony. For the sons of the wicked Athaliah had broken into the house of God and even used the holy things of the house of Yahweh for the Baals. So the king said the word, and they made a chest and put it outside by the gate of the house of Yahweh, and they made a proclamation in Judah and Jerusalem to bring to Yahweh the levy fixed by Moses, the servant of God, on Israel in the wilderness. And all the officials and all the people who were glad and brought in their levies and dropped them into the chest until they had finished. Now it happened that whenever the chest was brought in to the king's officer by the hand of the Levites, and when they saw that there was much money, then the king's scribe and the chief priest officer would come, empty the chest, take it, and return it to its place. Thus they did daily and collected much money. And the king and Jehoiada gave it to those who did the work of the service of the house of Yahweh. They hired masons and carpenters to restore the house of Yahweh, and also craftsmen in iron and bronze to repair the house of Yahweh. So those who did the work labored, and the repair work progressed in their hands, and they restored the house of God according to its specifications and strengthened it. When they had completed, they brought the rest of the money before the king and Jehoiada, and it was made into utensils for the house of Yahweh, utensils for the ministry and the burnt offering, and pans and utensils of gold and silver. And they were offering burnt offerings in the house of Yahweh continually all the days of Jehoiada. Then Jehoiada became old and full of days, and he died. He was 130 years old at his death. They buried him in the city of David among the kings, because he had done what is good in Israel and to God and his house. But after the death of Jehoiada, the officials of Judah came and bowed down to the king, and the king listened to them. And they forsook the house of Yahweh, the God of their fathers, and served the Asherim and the idols. So wrath came upon Judah and Jerusalem for this their guilt. Yet he sent prophets to them to bring them back to Yahweh. Though they testified against them, they did not give ear. Now the Spirit of God clothed Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada the priest, and he stood above the people and said to them, Thus says God, why do you trespass against the commandments of Yahweh and do not succeed? Because you have forsaken Yahweh, he has also forsaken you. So they conspired against him, and at the command of the king, they stoned him to death in the court of the house of Yahweh. Thus Joash the king did not remember the loving kindness which his father Jehoiada had shown him, but he killed his son. And as he died, he said, May Yahweh see and avenge. Now it happened at the turn of the year that the military force of the Arameans came up against him, and they came to Judah and Jerusalem, destroyed all the officials of the people from among the people, and sent all their spoil to the king of Damascus. Indeed, the military force of the Arameans came with a small number of men, yet Yahweh gave a very great military force into their hands, because they had forsaken Yahweh, the God of their fathers. Thus they executed judgment on Joash. When they had gone from him, for they left him very sick, his servants conspired against him because of the blood of the son of Jehoiada the priest, and killed him on his bed. So he died, and they buried him in the city of David. But they did not bury him in the tombs of the kings. Now these are those who conspired against him: Zabad, the son of Shimeath, the Amititess, and Jehozabad, the son of Shimrith, the Moabitess. Now as to his sons and the many oracles against him, and the rebuilding of the house of God, behold, they are written in the treatise of the book of the kings. Then Amaziah, his son, became king in his place. That's going to conclude our reading from the biblical text. Now we'll move on to the reading from Daily Doctrine. Day 185, Good Works and Salvation. Are good works necessary to salvation? The question is not a simple one. In addressing this issue, Turretin argues that there are three main views when it comes to the necessity of good works. Some are like modern libertines who make good works arbitrary and indifferent. Others are like ancient Pharisees who contend that works are necessary to justification. In trying to hold the orthodox middle ground between these two extremes, Turretin maintains that good works are necessary, but not according to the necessity of merit. The question is not whether good works are necessary to effect salvation or to acquire it of right, but whether good works are required as a means and way for possessing salvation. It is in this last sense that Turretin affirms the necessity of good works. According to Turretin, the necessity of good works can be proved from several factors. Number one, God commands good works. Number two, the covenant of grace requires good works. Number three, the gospel is a rule of faith and of life. And number four, the state of grace sets us free to do good works. And number five, the blessing of God includes sanctification unto good works. In the covenant of grace, there are still stipulations and obligations. Some call them conditions. Read that again. There are duties man owes to God and blessings that are connected to the exercise of these duties, even if, and this is important, God is the one who sees to it that those duties are carried out. Heaven cannot be reached without good works. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 14, and Revelations chapter 21, verse 27, which is why it is such good news that he who began a good work in us will be faithful to complete it. Philippians chapter 1, verse 6. To insist on the necessity of good works is not to become a legalist or a theonomian. This question about the necessity of good works has often perplexed Christians. If, on the one hand, we say no good works are not necessary, we can hardly make sense of the warnings and moral imperatives of the New Testament. But if we say good works are necessary to salvation, it strikes many Christians as though heaven is what we earn by our effort and obedience. But that's not what Hebrews chapter 12, verse 14, strive for the holiness without which no one will see the Lord means, nor what Turretin means. Works can be considered in three ways, either with reference to justification or sanctification or glorification. They are related to justification, not antecedently, efficiently and meritoriously, but consequently and declaratively. They are relative to sanctification constitutively because they constitute and promote it. They are related to glorification antecedently and because they are related to it as a means to the end. That's a dense paragraph, but wonderfully concise and crucially important. Good works are intricately linked to justification, sanctification, and glorification, but they are related in different ways. Good works come after justification as a result and a declaration. Good works are identified with sanctification as its definition and cheerleader. And good works come before glorification as God's appointed means to a divinely secured end. As Turretin puts it, grace is glory begun as glory is grace consummated. That's going to conclude our reading from the biblical text this morning and from Daily Doctrine. As we sadly watched and read in 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles this morning, how someone can start so well as King Jehoash did and yet fell miserably in the end. We want to finish and run our race well and be, as Paul said in the scriptures, I have run the race, I've kept the faith, I've finished my course. And sadly, we did not see that here in the text this morning. Then we read about good works this morning and our sanctification and our justification. And are they necessary for salvation? Not necessary to salvation, but necessary to come from our salvation. Smoke and fire and smoke. Again, we must understand that good works will be worked out and through us by God if we are truly his children and truly his elect. Hope you have a blessed day today. Enjoy this 4th of July, celebrating this country that God is so greatly blessed, and give him glory for it. Soli Deo Glory.